Ahoy VC, welcome to the Personal Oasis. This is the Blind Island. I'm your host Isaac, and today I am introducing a new segment. This segment is called Blind Island Night Train. These segments will include trains of albums that I'm going to be taking a look at, examining, and just reviewing in general. I think that it will switch things up a little bit and giving a little bit of a different dynamic here on the Personal Oasis. So let me know if you like these segments and if you like just this way of speaking with you guys. So today I am going to get started off with this series on one of the greatest trilogies of albums ever put out, and that would be the Berlin Trilogy by Mr. David Bowie. I have all of his albums right here, and we'll just get started. I'm just going to do quick reviews of each one, my general impressions, thoughts, and what I believe the impact it's had on general music at large, and which one of these is my personal favorite. So let's get started with the first in the trilogy, and that would be Low. This was recorded during a period when David Bowie was really just trying to basically bring his life back together. He was strung out on cocaine, lots of drugs, drinking. He said that during the album that he recorded right before this one, Station to Station, which has lots of great tunes on it, he says he can barely remember recording that album because he was just so strung out the entire time. And so he actually went to Berlin with Iggy Pop to the heroin capital of the world at the time, Berlin, which is really funny to me that they chose that area, but that was where they decided to kind of dry out, figure out some new ideas, and that's where David Bowie really started to collaborate with Brian Eno. And to me, especially these first two albums, they're kind of Brian Eno albums with David Bowie as guest star. And many people might disagree with me, but Brian Eno was the one that was really bringing a lot of the heat. David Bowie was feeling very confused, and just his brain was in shambles from his drug abuse. That these albums really did help him to kind of get back to where he needed to go. And the title for this album, Low, really reflects the type of music that's on here. This is music where David Bowie is truly at his lowest point, feeling incredibly bittered and pained, going through a very painful separation from his then wife. The songs on here are big, huge ballads mixed with heart-wrenching lyrics that are full of depression and heartache. The first side has some classic tunes such as Sound and Vision, Always Crashing in the Same Car, A New Career in a New Town. These are, I love the song Always Crashing in the Same Car, just that you can't get out of this same repetition. It's like you're always stuck. And then it goes into side B, where David Bowie really lets Brian Eno take over, and the wash of the ambient sounds that are found on here are incredible. Really forward-thinking music for the time, and it was the first time that I think that Brian Eno really was going into these ambient soundscapes as well. And you can just tell that it was a marriage made in heaven between these two artists. It was a lightning captured in a bottle, and a fantastic record to start off the trilogy. I have a second US pressing, and very clean. This is a record that I would highly recommend that you get the cleanest copy that you can possibly receive, because the music on here is very crystalline and beautiful, and you want to hear every single note and not be taken aback by any background noise. So, great album, start off a great series. Then the second one, which I would say, sequels are always difficult. This was The Empire Strikes Back, and Heroes is definitely what seems to be David Bowie's comeback, because he seems to be far more comfortable and a lot more assured of himself at this time. He seems to be really running the train on this particular album. His voice is a lot clearer here. While Low is an incredible record, Heroes seems to be far more of a David Bowie project than Low. And it's still, ballads, heavy ballads mixed with powerful music, but the ballads seem to have a little bit more hope within them. They seem to have a little bit more awe of the world, and you can just feel that energy escaping David Bowie this entire record. The second half is filled with ambient soundscapes as well, but it's the first record in this trilogy to end with The Secret Life of Arabia, and that's where it kind of breaks off, and David Bowie starts to play a little bit more with his sound again. Robert Fripp here on the guitar too is just sensational. His work on this record is a shock of electricity down the spine, and truly a transcendent album. Deserves every shred of credit and praise that it deserves. So, excellent record, and definitely a high watermark point for Bowie. Now, coming to the black sheep of the trilogy, we come to Lodger. This was seen as the finale of the Berlin trilogy, even though it wasn't even recorded in Berlin. It was a collaboration between Brian Eno and David Bowie. However, the collaboration was a little bit more strained this time. Brian Eno wasn't really interested in creating the avant-garde pop anymore and the arty pop that David Bowie was interested in making. He was more interested in creating more soundscapes and dreamy images through his music. And David Bowie wanted to continue to push pop music further and further. He was starting to almost be seen as a relic of pop music, with artists like Gary Newman, Talking Heads, claiming that he was a huge inspiration on them, even though he had just come out with albums literally the same years that they had. So, very interesting story to this one, and a lot of people don't see it as equaling the heights and of the previous albums, and I would have to agree to an extent. It definitely doesn't have the same majesty or the same flow as the other records. This one is very schizophrenic. You can tell that he's far more inspired by the international sounds that he was hearing at the time, and in fact, I would say that the album with David Byrne and Brian Eno would be heavily influenced by the work that was done on this album, and it continues to push off into various soundscapes. The songs, however, are not as accessible as they were on Heroes and Low, the main songs anyway. And this is the first one in the series to have no ambient tracks on it at all. However, the album artwork is very striking, and captures you right away. And I would just have to say, though, that this has one of the best opening numbers of any David Bowie album ever, with Fantastic Voyage, fantastic track, and definitely an underrated album in his discography. It's not matching the heights of the other two in this series, but it's definitely worth praise, and definitely a high watermark again in a career full of them. So while it may not be the strongest of the trilogy, I'm hoping that this album continues to be receiving renewed critical acclaim, kind of like Return of the Jedi. It's a fantastic record, even though it doesn't match the heights of the other two. So, now like my thoughts on just where I would rank these as far as which one's my favorite. Obviously, this is number 3. It's the weakest, but it's an incredibly strong album. I would put Low at number 2 and Heroes at number 1. Though they're truly interchangeable. It's dependent upon the mood and the aura that you're really looking for. Just to me, Heroes sounds far more of a David Bowie-led project. However, it can't be understated how futuristic these albums sound. Even today, they are unlike anything that's really being played by popular artists on the radio. It's like when you think about David Bowie, you're thinking of an artsy pop icon, but he was huge. And the fact that he was coming out with albums like this is just incredible. You just don't hear big league artists taking giant wild swings like this anymore. And his influence on artists that were even his contemporaries and artists that continue to be making music today can't be understated. He was a genius, he was a visionary, and definitely a missed icon. Fantastic music. Anyone who hasn't listened to the Berlin Trilogy in its entirety, I highly recommend it. It's a mine that continues to yield jewels and diamonds, and it's a wonderful experience. So, great records, highly recommended, one and all. If I had to give rankings, I would give 5 out of 5 for low-end Heroes with a 4 for Lodger. Great records and definitely worth your time. So guys, what did you think of this segment, the Blind Island Night Train? Let me know in the comments below, and I hope that you guys have a great night on your own personal oasis. Cheers.